Hello, BookTube. This channel recently hit 16,000 subscribers, and out of momentum, I put out a call for questions, which is what we tend to do when we hit a subscriber milestone. I honestly wasn't thinking that I would get many responses, since I make lots of videos, including live streams, but a lot of questions came in. So we're going to go through them now, and I'm going to break these up. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to all the questions in one video, so I'll break this up and into 30-minute installments, and we'll just do that until we get through them all. So let's see what you people had to ask. So, well, now what is this? Oh, okay. In between the last time that we did a Q&A and now, BookTube has started identifying people by handles instead of names. That's going to make it hard to parse, I would imagine, some of these things, but we'll give it a try. Marcia Johansson, congrats on reaching 16K. I'm sure this has been answered in some form or another, but relatively new subscriber here. Have you always been at such ease in front of a camera? You are able to speak at length about so many books, historical figures, and other various topics in a way that keeps me coming back for a listen. Appreciate to know more about your personal history that brought you to this point. Well, two factors play a role here. One is that I think you're all imaginary. Until you come here for wine and calzones at Hyde Cottage and Frida can scream at you, I don't think you're real, which significantly decreases any tension about being on camera. But the real answer here is not so much experience being on camera. The ease here that you're talking about is not so much being on camera. I think what you're referring to here is an ease of speaking. And I got that from decades of working at an information desk at a busy bookstore, where you can't be tongue-tied. You have to be able to recall lots of things and speak lots of things at length, impromptu on all kinds of headings. I did that every day and loved it. Oh, I loved it. I don't think bookstore information desks, retail bookstore information desks, get that kind of activity anymore. I don't think they do. I haven't been inside a retail bookstore in quite some time. I'm hoping that I will be inside a retail bookstore at the beginning of March. But I haven't been inside one in quite some time. So but the last few times that I was inside any retail bookstore, their information desk was a ghost town. Didn't matter how many customers were in the store, they had no questions. So it could be that I experienced the last of that phenomenon. I think I probably did. The last point at which the huge reading public of the city did not have access to the internet. And so they needed an information desk for all kinds of things that they don't need it for now. But I think that's probably where the ease you're talking about comes from. Aaron James Hook, as I said, Steve, 16K was going to arrive no matter what you tried to stop it. Well, I certainly tried my hardest. I bombarded you every day with boring videos. You would think that would turn people off, but it didn't work. User dash CB6RZ2KE5U. Okay, all right. So I know that it's impossible to shame a bot, but you really ought to try harder. Well, congratulations on 16K. Thank you for all the videos. You're welcome, impersonal bot, created in Belarus. Books Knits, congratulations, well deserved. Is it really well deserved? What do I do to deserve this? Well, what do I do? Mild Rumpus, a wonderful booktube channel, wonderful new booktube channel, striking just the right chord with everybody, I notice. Congrats on 60K, thank you very much. It should be you instead of me. That is not meant ironically. It should be you instead of me. There are a whole bunch of people, but Derek Day, congrats Steve, thank you for your content. Well, thank you. Jabba 88, congratulations on 16K, onward to 17K. This channel will never reach 17K. Who is your favorite character in all of Greek mythology? Greek mythology? I don't know. I've always had a soft spot for Jason, of Jason and the Argonauts. I've always had a soft spot for him. He seems like this hapless everyman caught in between all the weirdness of Greek mythology, but none of it impinging on him. None of the crazy stuff they get with, for instance, Theseus. I don't know, maybe him. I haven't really thought about it. Lou G says, congrats on 16K. Rena is reading, says, number one, On your channel, you've told us about your strong bonds with Lucy, Weisser, and a dog you made your lieutenant when you had a large pack. Yeah, yeah. Aiden was not just my lieutenant when I had a large pack. Uh, Aiden was my lieutenant when I had many large packs. He outlived 2 whole litters of dogs. He just kept on going. He kept on living forever and ever and ever, and was always in charge. When I wasn't around, he was always in charge. Uh, could you share a story about other friends with whom you were especially close? Uh, okay. Well, it's it's odd to say. Aiden was special to me. He was the rock. I called him Sir, and he was the rock. He was there all the time. He was there for 23 years. Um, and Lucy, of course, some of you who have been watching this channel for a very long time will remember Lucy. She made appearances in a number of videos when I was just starting this channel, and she was also special. I loved Weisser, and he was, it turns out, just by random chance, just by musical chairs, my last beagle. But it wasn't the same thing. Any of you who have been repeated dog or cat owners, or let's face it, parents, although you won't admit it, you will know that some of them touch you more than others. And Weisser was not one of those. Lucy and the lieutenant that you're talking about were, and of course, there's one who was even more than either of them. The best friend I've ever had was a beagle, one particular beagle. And there are innumerable stories, but I don't know what kind of stories they'd make for a human. Every day was full of stories, but I don't know. I can't think of just a discrete cut-off story off the top of my head for any of them. But there have been innumerable dogs. There have been a handful who were extra special. I guess what I'm trying to do is just correct here, but it feels weird to do. It feels wrong to do, to somehow exclude Weisser, who was a sweet old man, a sweet old gray-faced dog. It feels wrong to exclude him, but nevertheless, it also feels wrong for you say with whom you were especially close and include him. I don't know, that's going to sound very cold and brutal. I loved Weisser, of course I did. But I was especially close to my lieutenant, and I was especially close to Lucy. Anyway, you have another question. Yes, what is a kind thing to do for a dog at the end of its life? 2 old ladies, not mine, I've known since they were puppies, probably have only weeks to live. Oh. Well, you've been doing the right thing all along. I'm sure that you've been lavishing them with affection all along. That's all you can do. The thing you can do now is not for them. At the end of life, when you're this close to the end, it's all on their people. Their people can't fail. And that's exhausting. So I would say there's nothing you can do for them except what you've been doing all along, what you would do anyway, what you would have done when they were puppies. But you can be extra supportive for their people. That's what you should be doing. So those people have to cross the finish line. You absolutely cannot fail at the finish line. And that's when it's hardest. So that's when it's most likely. So reach out, make sure that they know they can rely on you for anything. These tags are just a not... Le Petit Penguin? I'm afraid it may have been my doing. I hit the subscribe button yesterday and noticed the number of subscribers immediately increased from 15.9 to 16K, so you were the one. I've loved watching your videos the last few days and must admit I'm completely new to the entire concept of BookTube. It was your daily penguins that drew me in. Thanks. Yes, BookTube. It's a sprawling community now. Thousands and thousands and thousands of channels devoted to one kind or another of bookish conversation, which means that unlike in the early days when it was all bourbon-drinking, fan-rogering, 30-year-old nutjobs pinwheeling on camera about the YA book that they just bought and are never going to read. Now it's all kinds of reading and all kinds of readers, which means that in the old days when you had to just find the good people who are talking about books written for children as opposed to the bad people talking about books written for children, now the main process is settling in with the crowd you like. Finding the people who either represent your reading tastes or challenge your reading tastes, I would say both, and finding more and more of them, because you're going to have all kinds of readers out there. 1SS Cardinals, Congratulations on 16K. I thank you for the continued willingness to share so much of your time and knowledge with us. I am a professional jazz musician. Oh my, how interesting. So I would love to hear your thoughts and recommendations on any standout biographies of jazz or any other musicians you have read. Also, any recommendations of great novels that center around musicians or music in general. Well, I am not a big fan of jazz myself, and so I read the major biographies and books on jazz purely because they are major biographies and major books, not because I'm zooming with the subject. Like for instance, I years and years ago I read Miles Davis's autobiography that I thought was surprising and quite good. And when it comes to books about music, oh my, I would say where to start, but I know where to start. Frank Conroy's novel Body and Soul is incredible. It starts off with classical music, and then it goes to what I would consider horrible 12-tone crap, but it ends up in jazz in a very pointed way. It ends up in the jazz world. So, and apart from it's suffused with music, but apart from that, it's also tremendously good. So I strongly recommend that. Book Chat with Pat. Hi, Steve. Congratulations on this milestone. You often make reference to your sainted Ma and also to your family's Irish roots. Would you share where in Ireland your family comes from? Donegal. And on the subject of Ireland, are there any books about Ireland that you would particularly recommend? Well, there have been quite a few. It depends on what kind of book about Ireland you want. A comprehensive history. Thomas Barnett wrote a comprehensive history of Ireland that's not that old. I think it's called Ireland: A History. It was pretty good. Most of the great books that I've read about Ireland were fragmented. They weren't just a soup to nuts history. They were about, the Easter Rising or the chieftains and the kings or whatnot. They were about some specific subject, or they were a memoir. I could make a long list. Reads and Eats says, congratulations on 16K. Question number 1. What one book would you say shaped part of your life? Well, books have shaped part of my life. They have been my passion and my profession for the whole of my life. So that is certainly shaping my life. I think you probably mean shaping internally. That is much rarer. The books don't tend to do that. It tends to be real things that do that, loves or losses or friendships or hatreds, things like that. And there certainly wouldn't be just one. Question. Maybe I didn't understand that question. Question number 2 is there a country you would like to visit because of a book you read? Which country and what book would it be? Well, there's no country that I would like to visit because of a book. I would like to visit them because they're there, just because they're there and I want to visit them. And that list is complete, except for Australia, which I want to visit just because it's there and because it's home to an entire canine species that I've never met. But not because of a book. I mean, I've loved books about it. Of course, I do a lot of reading about Australia because now I know I'm never going to see it. My tally is never going to be complete. But for instance, Fatal Shore by Robert Hughes, which has been mocked. It was mocked in the New York Times famously as a book that everybody's bought and nobody's read. I read it and loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Is Crandall? Sorry, these handles are making it hard to attribute the questions. Congratulations on a well-earned 16K. Is it well-earned? Really? All I'm doing is sitting here talking about books every day. Now we'll have the pleasure of hearing for the next few months that this channel will never get to 17K. You're absolutely right. It won't. This isn't Michael K. Vaughan. We're not going to shoot to 20K. No, it's never going to happen. But like the Boston meteorologist, when we hear a unanimous forecast, we know to immediately ignore it and believe the opposite. Already looking forward to the next Q&A. Well, so many of you have been emailing me saying how much fun you find this, that we might do more regular Q&As than just waiting, because 17K is never going to happen on this channel. I think you mentioned Isaac Arthur's Science and Futurism channel here before. Yes, Isaac Arthur, Science and Futurism. If you don't know that channel on YouTube, you really should find it. It's terrific. Absolutely terrific. It's only gotten better with time. Do you put any stock into his rather optimistic vision of the far future, interplanetary or interstellar civilization of the end of time, etc.? No. Oh, good Lord, no. I don't think there's a greater and more informed optimist than Isaac anywhere. I do not share his optimism at all, not in the slightest. He's not pie in the sky about it. He realizes how many chances there are against it. He just chooses to come down on the side of that Gene Roddenberry style optimism. Is there any reason to be hopeful for the survival of recognizable human civilization on a scale of tens of thousands of years? I would say no. No, not even much shorter than that. Much shorter than that. There's a comet an asteroid that I believe is going to strike the Earth in 2029. Even if it doesn't, there's a much bigger asteroid that will come, I think, in 2035. And those are just the ones we know about. There are plenty that could come for us from the dark of the sun that we wouldn't know about until it was too late to do a thing. And the solar system is an absolute shooting gallery of these things. They are everywhere. There are millions and millions of them. And also, there's the human civilization part. Right now, in this particular instant of humanity, the world is poised on a gigantic rash. Think of it as a COVID-19, only for politics, of fascism. And fascism hates open-ended, open-minded scientific inquiry. They absolutely hate it. They squash it. It has to be in service to the leader, and it has to be afraid of the leader. The leader is more powerful than it. That's why fascist dictators are always the worst ones to deal with any kind of natural disaster, because they don't want to admit that this thing is more powerful than they are. They'll deny it long after people have died in the rubble or of a pandemic. They'll be denying it still. And I don't mean to darken this Q&A, and certainly if Isaac wants his optimism, he's welcome to it. But I look at the world and I see that ordinarily in the past 50 years, spikes towards that kind of mindless jackbooted authoritarianism have been just that. There have been spikes here, a spike there. Now it seems to me to be almost universal. Largely propelled by one man, which is something that future historians, if there are any, are going to be just astounded by. They're going to be astounded that one man, Steve Bannon, has just been out there openly destabilizing free democratic election in country after country. He's done it 4 times now. Peru, Brazil, Germany, and America. Each time's leading to bloodshed, each time leading to mob violence, each time almost succeeding, and he's still free. He's still on a podcast. He's not only been tried, he's been sentenced. And he's still free. No one's even thinking about bothering him. He's just got his eye on the next free election, whatever it is. If you think that the next election in Germany is going to be held without bloodshed, the upcoming election in the UK, you think that isn't going to happen without bloodshed? It's going to be bloodshed, and it's going to be him. He'll be the reason. He'll be the one calling the shots on openly traceable phone lines. Just one person. So if that can happen without him being, arrested or deplatformed or anything, even inconvenienced in any way, then I would say there's an uptick in a hunger for fascism and just a groundswell towards it. And fascism is deeply inimical to the kind of science futurism that Isaac Arthur purveys. It hates it. It has to steal and thuggishly borrow and threaten any technology that it gets. So no, I don't share his optimism. Let's see, we had another question, though. And when you get to it, I'd love a free dissertation on the early development of the Concord Circle and its influence on early 20th century Scandinavian poetry. 50,000 word minimum, please. Take all the space you need. Yes. You joke. But I still get those from time to time. I still get emails like that from time to time. Tomorrow's Classic says, "Hi, Steve. Congrats on a well-deserved subscribers." Are they deserved, though? All I do is sit in front of a camera and talk. There are no special effects, no jump cuts, no nothing. I just sit in front of the camera and talk. 17K just around the corner. Look how long the crawl it was to get to 16K. We'll never get to 17K. 2 questions for you. 1, I recently found 3 old hardback Susan Howitch novels, The Rich Are Different, Sins of the Father, and Cashel Mara. I've been really enjoying them. What are your thoughts on her, if any? Is she still remembered and read these days? I'd never heard of her, but gave her a shot. I don't think she's remembered. I don't think she's in print anymore. Boy, is she good, though. Big. If you want that kind of a thing, that big, over-the-top, luscious narrative, The Rich Are Different is just a classic along those lines. I guess we don't keep classics along those lines. I guess they come and go. That's a shame. Unless they're done ironically. If a writer writes one of those ironically, it might stick around. But I'm glad that you're loving her. That's wonderful. I don't have any Susan Howich at all. I haven't read Casual Mara. I didn't particularly like. I found a lot of holes in it, but The Rich Are Different I loved. Yeah, Susan Howich, Barbara Taylor Bradford. These people, they ruled the roost, and they are now gone. And you have a second question though, yes? 2, are there any books that are like Shogun but based in India? I'd love to know more about Indian history, but I do also love an adventure. Thanks for the endless free hours of bookish joy. Well, you're welcome there. The endless free hours of bookish joy have been just as much fun for me as they have been for you. But when you talk about Shogun but based in India, are you talking about an outsider coming to India? Because there, I don't know that anything is coming to mind. There have been huge, sprawling Indian novels, but nothing exactly like Shogun. Certainly not historical, that I know of. If any of you do, I'd love to hear about it. Last Gen UCR. I try to read books from time to time, but I always end up just reading through my stack of comic books instead. There was a time when I felt silly about this, but now I just embrace it. This is about as far as I'm willing to dive into any literary world. My question, has there ever been a comic book, single issues, story arc, series, that left you profoundly affected in some way, on par with a novel that was either stirring, transformative, or inspiring? Well, I don't find novels any of those things. And so, no, comic books have never profoundly affected me. Being loved, losing a loved one, walking around with a chatterbox on a beautiful spring day, those things profoundly move me. This sort of stuff doesn't. That it seems to be a common misconception in questions that I always get. People just assume that, but I know what you mean. And yes, the answer is absolutely yes. Comic books, oh my God, they can deliver on all those registers, all of them. There was Matt Wagner's run on Grendel that was incredible. I think it was Matt Wagner, wasn't it? Of course, I've talked about a whole bunch of comics that I love. Like, for instance, who was it? Was it Jeff Johns who did the Justice Society of America? For years and years and years, he did the Justice Society. Some writer did the Justice Society of America. Issue number 55 of that run. I loved it. I don't know how many times I've read it. It was there was a story of an old woman, Ma Hunkel, who is assuming that she has to live forever in hiding because the mobsters who have vowed vengeance on her life make it impossible for her to live a public life. And she has been a sort of de facto den mother to the whole of the Justice Society. And that issue is just amazing. I just love it. And there are many issues like that, many standout issues like that. Beowulf Bushcraft says, so happy for you, Steve. Your description of the strategy in the Ill-Earth War was so energetic that I had to read the book for myself. Ooh, did you like it? You had to have liked it. You had to have liked it. Lord Fowlsbane, I don't know. It could go either way. But the Ill-Earth War, there's no way. Actually, Lord Fowlsbane and The Power That Preserves, they could go either way. The Power That Preserves has Longueurs. But the Ill-Earth War is just pure magic from start to finish. What do you think was the biggest flaw in the last Chronicles of Thomas Covenant? Yeah, we did a there was a booktube event where we read through the Thomas Covenant books, particularly excluding the last Chronicles. But of course, during that read-along, the last Chronicles showed up at the Brattle Bookshop, so I got them and I reread them. And, I did a lot of thinking about why they don't work. I think they don't work. A couple of people chimed up during that read-along and said they thought they did work. I don't think they work, and I think the reason why is because the fire in the belly is gone. It's there all through, I believe, the Ill-Earth War and The Power That Preserves. And I think it's still very much detectable in the second Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. But by the third, I don't think it's there at all. I didn't get that impression. I gave them a fair-minded second try, and it didn't work for me. The Left-Handed Reader says, congratulations. Quintessential Read says, congratulations on 16K. Can you tell us a story of your travels where your dogs got you out of a sticky situation? Oh my God, endless stories, endless times where my dogs got me out of sticky situations. And of course, a couple where they got me into them, including the famous moose story. But the main thing that comes to mind is bears. Of course, an interested bear, which park rangers, if you're going parking, if you're going camping, they will tell you that an interested bear is very rare. That bears almost always want nothing to do with you, that they will know you're around long before you know they're around, and they'll just avoid you. I don't know if maybe it was my BO or something, but that wasn't always true for me. Maybe I was just in the wrong places. I was in the wilds of the then Soviet Union. I was in the wilds of Siberia. I was in the wilds of northern Canada. Maybe the bears there didn't get the memo. Maybe they're not park bears. Either way, there were many, many instances when I was in those kinds of places where if I had not had a coordinated pack of dogs at my command, that interested bear would have been a well-fed bear. If I'd been alone, if I'd been by myself or with other humans, I don't know what I would have done. But in those circumstances, even a great big bear, I mean, there were a couple of times where we, especially in Europe, where we encountered massive grizzly bears, bigger than at least it seemed to me, bigger than you ever see them in North America. Even a bear like that is going to swallow his pride and run when faced with a coordinated dog pack. There's almost nothing in the world, except for Pleistocene holdovers like rhinos or African elephants, nothing could withstand a coordinated dog pack. A dog pack that is the sheer Brownian motion music of a coordinated dog pack where the two go in and take nips. They get out before the claws get them, and while the animal has turned to get at them, two more go in for nips on the other side. And there's always a constant circling, and there's always a constant terrain covering, because in addition to harrying the victim, you are also exhausting them. And because you're a dog, which is, I don't know, if you want to take a look at your dog, you're mostly rib cage, you're not going to get exhausted. It's cruel, but it's gorgeous to watch. To me, it's gorgeous to watch. And if you are, when I was out camping with not only my dogs, but when I went out and about, I would also gather indigenous dogs around me. So it was a big crowd. And I was the brain directing that. It wasn't random. I was giving that, I was making a pack out of that collection of dogs. No bear is going to face that. Almost no animal will face that. And those bears wouldn't have had a single qualm about ripping me to shreds if I hadn't been there with that pack. So yeah, it would happen plenty of times. To readers it may concern. Hi, Steve. 2 questions. When you sit down to read, what do you hope a book will deliver for you? Feelings, insights, perhaps just serenity or excitement or of some sort? And is that something unique to literature in some way? God, where do you people come up with all these great questions? I swear, it never stops, no matter how many times we do this. And 2, of the especially long literary historical works, things like In Search of Lost Time, Decline and Fall, A Dance to the Music of Time, even the Durant's Story of Civilization, oh, bless you for including that. Which do you consider actually worth the time to read all the way through? They all are. For me, they all are. Some more than others. I have never warmed up to Proust. I love Gibbon. And I love the Durant series. I love it. Dance the Music of Time, I have loved it for a long time, and also recommended it to many people, and tried to recommend the way to read it, ways to read it that will get them past its enormous length. But your first question is fascinating here. I want to, when you sit down to read, what do you hope a book will deliver for you? Feelings, insights, perhaps just serenity or excitement of some sort, and is that something unique to literature in some way? Okay. Oh my God, I could make an hour-long video on this alone. First of all, yes, there is something that is unique to literature, in my opinion. Maybe music fans would say that music does the same thing. Maybe even cinema fans would say that it doesn't. Maybe they're right. But when I think of books, I think of them as unique because you are allowing someone into your mind. A totally silent process. You're allowing someone inside your mind and giving them permission to attempt to rearrange the furniture. That's huge. That doesn't exist outside of personal relationships in the real world, I think. And believe it or not, I don't know how long you've been watching this channel. A lot of people, curiously enough, the people who've been watching this channel the longest will probably be the ones who believe this the most. And certainly people in my real life will believe it. But newcomers to me tend to see me as this blowhard that, is never thinks about anything or reconsiders anything. I can't do anything about that. But believe it or not, every single time I approach a new book, whether the author is new to me, whether it's a reread, whether it's a brand new book, Every single time I sit down with a book, an ebook or print book, there is a moment that is hallowed to me where I'm about to start. And then I dive right in. And in that moment, I want my whole life changed. I want to be completely thrilled. I want to think really hard. I want to care. I want to be moved. All those things that in that earlier question where books harrow your soul, where they're a huge moving point in your life. I want to love the book that I've just started. Every single time. There is no critical cynicism at all. I have said many, many times, I've been saying for decades, that a critic who is cynical is worthless and should hang up their pen. They can no longer serve their one and only audience, which is their reader. They can no longer serve them. They can just reinforce their prejudices or their lazinesses or reinforce their own. There is no cynicism at all. That is why I have such passionate reactions to books. Because every single time I'm going in looking for the book to be the greatest thing since sliced cheese. And they never are. Mostly they never are. That's why my reactions are the way they are. That's why they are so incredibly immediate. Even people who don't like me, even enemies of mine, would say, well, yeah, he does get worked up about books. And if he really loves something, it's certain that he really did love it. That's the reason why. Because I go at every single book, even the self-published crap that I review every day. Before I start any book, there's that hallowed moment, that I'm all yours. I'm letting you inside. I'm all yours. Show me what you got. That leads to a lot of disappointment, but that moment never goes away. But anyway, oh my God, we're past the 30-minute mark here. We'll stop there and we'll pick up with the next one.